We'll do the roll call. Ms. Altel,
Present.
Mr. Dunbar,
Present.
Mr. Trombley,
Here.
Ms. Posen.
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. We have a forum. Aaron, will you please do the public involvement
Of
announcement?
course. AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by a staff or consultant, and then the committee can discuss that business item. Once that discussion is done, it'll turn to the public comment period where the public is invited to formally comment. As a reminder, each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic, and we will have a beeping noise that'll happen when your time is up and kind of let you know about that. And then some housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn off your camera when you're not speaking on an item. And if you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
What's
Do we have an approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Do we have any changes? Are there any objections to adopting the agenda? The agenda is approved. For agenda item 4, we have before us the minutes from the April 28th, 2022 for approval. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any changes or discussions? Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, April 28th, 2022. Moving on to action items. We have action item 5A, 2023 to 2026 tip, comment response summary, and interagency draft. Aaron, will you be presenting on this one?
I will. I'll go ahead and start and then turn it over to you guys. So as everyone knows, we've been working on the 23 through 26 tip, our 4-year funding program over the last few months. So before you are the comment response summary. We had a 30-day public comment period where we got 182 comments were received and responded to. You also have the interagency draft version of the tip before you. So after today's meeting, if everything is approved, it'll go to the Interagency Consultation Group, which is made up of state, federal, and local air quality members who will review the draft tip and develop the air quality conformity determination. That determination will go out for 30-day public comment period. Then that determination, plus any comments on the determination and the tip itself, will come back for approval in August. And then it'll go forward to final approval by FHWA and FTA in September. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed the comment response summary, and they only had 2 changes, which I'll briefly touch on here. The first is a change to project RDY 00018, 3rd Avenue Signals and Lighting Upgrade. Change the termini to E Street to Cordova instead of Ingra to Cordova, where it's at right now, I believe. That was a slight typo error when staff was putting together the draft document. And next is a change to the Dale Street non-motorized project, which was originally in the non-motorized table. The Technical Advisory Committee recommended changing that project to a full road upgrade with non-motorized improvements. So you'll see that project now on table 2, roadway. It's kind of up to you guys how you want to do this. Do you want to go through all the individual comments, or do you want me to give a high-level overview of the changes that were made based on the public comment response summary? How would you guys like me to handle that?
I prefer a high level.
Okay, thank you. So, Christine, if you can go ahead and pull up the draft tip. So in front of you on the screen here, you'll see the draft tip itself. All the changes that were made based on feedback that we got from the public, other agencies, or the Technical Advisory Committee are in this draft document in red. So you may see on our first table, there's a substantial amount of changes. Do you guys need paper copies of the tip?
Yes.
Okay. So before you'll see the changes. The changes for table one right here are kind of based on a comment from FHWA about making it easier to be able to see where project costs and where project revenues are. So this is our attempt to be able to show you, especially those lines at the bottom, it says AMATS allocation project costs and AMATS allocation revenue, and see, are we fiscally constrained in our assumptions? As you can see here, the AMATS allocation is about 38 to 35 million a year for a total of $153 million that AMATS puts towards transportation project. AMATS allocation makes up the tables 2 through 6 in the program. Everything table 7 beyond are other organizations' allocations. So DOT's federal funds, transit and the railroads federal funds, and then other federal funds. So overall, there were some other general changes that we had to make in terms of cleaning up some of the numbers, the roadway numbers, table numbers, adding a column for responsible agency. So which agency is going to be responsible for implementing the project or doing the study. The biggest changes we made were actually removing 2 projects and adding 3 projects in their place. Sorry, when you're done, can you scroll down to the 5th Avenue? So on the roadway table, you'll see there are 2 projects we're recommending removing and that the technical advisory committee concurred with. It's removing the 5th Avenue signals and lighting upgrade projects. After reviewing these projects with Municipality of Anchorage and DOT, it was determined the cost of these projects were going to be much higher than originally anticipated as part of the nomination that was submitted. And so staff's recommending and the TAC recommending removal of those 2 projects and the addition of the 3 projects below them. First is Lois Drive and 32nd Avenue upgrade. The next is Folker Street upgrade. And the third is the Dale Street upgrade with the changes that the Technical Advisory Committee recommended. Other than that, all the other changes were just clarifications or corrections to misspellings throughout the document, or making sure that we're calling out who the responsible agencies are or that their year of expenditure dollars in the program. So that is a very high level review of all the changes that are being made. Recommended, sorry, not made, recommended.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Thanks, Al. Tell me as we get that.
Can I go ahead, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question on the added projects, Lois Drive and Folker Street upgrade, it says to upgrade those to current collector standards. What's the data, the traffic data being used? Because I know we have another project that's meant to upgrade our traffic data overall. And so can you just talk to me a little bit about the intersection of all of those projects and how they might work together, or are the other 2 already based off of existing data? Thanks.
I believe these projects are based on existing data. When we reached out to the Municipality of Anchorage to talk with them and kind of get cost estimates for them, they were talking about the needs that exist out there based on the data they have today. So I'm not sure what the other project you're talking about upgrading the data is.
It's the project we discussed earlier when we talked on the phone, Aaron, where we upgrade, or not upgrade, but we update is it the household survey data? I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Yes, it would be more based on the Municipality of Anchorage's data that they have that's a little more current. Our last household travel survey that we did for AMATS was back in 2012, I believe. And so the next household travel survey project hasn't started yet, so it wouldn't be based on that at this time.
Okay, got it. Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Folker Street is one of the reasons that also to upgrade is because it provides access to Providence, the UMed district.
Correct. It has a lot of benefits to it because it also will match up with the 40th or 42nd Avenue project that the Municipality of Anchorage is looking at. So it kind of is that right. And there's already nice non-motorized facilities on either side, kind of Tudor, connecting to Tudor and 40th. So it helps make that connection.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions or comments
Mr.
from the?
Mr. Chair, I would move to, Aaron, what's the motion you need? Is it move to refer this to the interagency consultation?
We're not at that point yet. We have to do public testimony and
Oh.
comment.
Okay,
Do you have any other questions from the community, Ms. Alto?
no, I want to wait until discussion if we have a motion on the table. Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public?
I have a question. Can I just ask?
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Sure, it's Mark Baggage.
Thank you, sir.
So my question is on the Fifth Avenue signals and lighting upgrade, the two items you've knocked out of the list there. Can you tell me what was the original estimate and what they think the new estimates are going to be, or do they know?
We don't know at that point because we stopped looking at the project. So I would have to go back and get all that information for you.
So I guess the question I'd have, well, two parts. One, Fifth Avenue is, the signals and, well, especially the lighting is, basically junk and should be repaired and upgraded, not just from C Street, but from Gamble all the way down. And if you eliminate it and you don't know what the differential cost is, the project is a needed project. If the Assembly, who just passed their downtown redevelopment plan and their long-term view of how downtown should be, but you take out the project that is kind of one of the backbones of the downtown, you're never going to get to, moving forward on the plan the Assembly just approved. So I'm a little concerned that if you don't know the cost or have a new plan of action, in reality, anything downtown should match up with what the Assembly just passed as their long-term plan for downtown. Was that taken into account in this project?
So there's actually another project. There is the downtown traffic engineering study that is going to be looking at downtown as a whole to make recommendations on roadway upgrades.
Right, I understand that. Yeah, no, I understand that project. I think it's like 550 or something thousand to kind of look at street movement and traffic movement and kind of the re-examine downtown, which I appreciate. That's great. But why wouldn't you put some of this money, at least in the next couple years out in anticipation? Because these lights are, I'm looking at one right now from my office, and I'm telling you, these lights are in need of repair. They're great nests for the seagulls right now. I'm just telling, that's my two bits. It's obviously AMATS makes the decision, but it seems premature to take it out. Maybe moving it a couple of years while the plan gets done may be a suggestion that I'd give, but I'll leave it at that, and that's my comments.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess this is for Aaron. So this is only my second meeting, so I'm learning about this stuff. But his suggestion to move it a couple of years, is that something we can do? Or and what is the effect of this deletion? Does that push it to a later plan? So his suggestion to push this project rather than eliminating it, how could we effectuate that, or do we not need to?
So in order to keep them in here, we would have to find the funding to do that. So you'd have to take a look at our tables that we have here because we are fiscally constrained. We are not able to just print money. And so we would have to find where that would come from. So that would have to come from current projects, or other projects would have to be delayed. It's a give and take. So we can keep it in here, but what project is going to be delayed or not move forward on in order to do that? In terms of carrying forward to future projects, it's not automatically carried forward if it's not in this current tip, but it can be looked at and renominated again in future tip cycles.
Okay. All right. So that is significantly different than the capital plans that the Assembly works with, where we specify the year and we don't have to have a hard and fast knowledge of where the money is. We can there's sort of theoretical dollars out there at the end of our plans, our 5-year plans, but you're saying it's not the case with these 3-year documents.
So in the first 4 years of our program, we have to know where the funding is going to come from. And I will say real quick, just on that, one of the other things we're needing to do is wait for these 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue projects to move forward so we can get a better idea of the true cost of this. Previous work that's been done was done with non-federal funds, and when you bring in federal funds, you tend to double or triple the cost and double the time frame it takes to complete. So we kind of need to see what that happened with those projects as well.
Can I ask another question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So we received a number of comments and we have had a number of discussions with the Assembly about the Academy Vanguard project. So if you were looking to save money, that's still in here, correct? And, you know, how seriously did the folks that removed those take the idea of not moving forward with Academy Vanguard, given the pretty intense neighborhood opposition?
Well, Academy Vanguard was added in by the policy committee. Mr. Weddleton was the one who worked on adding that back into the TIP. That project is also underway and has already obligated federal funds. So any federal funds expended to date would have to be paid back by the municipality of Anchorage if that project were stopped.
Okay. And let's see, one other that we got a number of, I don't know, I'm not as familiar, but with 92 Avenue and Scooter, we received a number of comments in opposition to that as well. Is that correct? To go further with that project?
I just want to point out really quickly, we're in public testimony right now. If we want to do questions and discussion with the committee members, we might, I don't know if we want to wait until after public testimony, just to hear what the public has to say and then kind of move back to these. I don't want to dismiss your questions, but they may have other ones that help with this as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman or Madam Chairman, who I have one last question.
Yes, sir, go ahead, please.
Again, this is Mark Begich. My question is to the comment that just was made. I recall at times when we rearranged the AMATS list, DRman is a great example where we took it off the list. We didn't have to pay back that federal money. So I guess the only question I'd leave out there for hopefully policymakers to ask, and that is, over the years, what projects that have to be paid back to the federal government that have been removed or delayed or postponed past the 4 years? Because, you know, that's always the threat. As soon as you start spending money, you can't do anything. I think there are opportunities for the committee to re-examine that. And as we did when I was mayor, and I just would put that on the table, because otherwise every project you put on this list, the minute you put it on, unless you're, quote, willing to pay back the money, according to the statement, then no project can move forward, or you can't eliminate it, which doesn't make sense. And I just would question if the policy group has seen any list of projects that have been delayed or postponed or removed or beyond the 4 years that required an actual money paid back to the federal government for those projects. That's all.
There's 2 people with their hands up. Emily, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, this is Emily Weiser, and I'm representing Bike Anchorage here today. So we had submitted a variety of comments on the tip, and we wanted to follow up on one of those in particular today, because the response from the project team was that our comments on this project, which is the Fireweed Lane Rehabilitation, that's RDY 00001, that the comments would be forwarded to the design team for consideration. But we are worried about the language that's currently in the tip and whether that might be a little bit too restrictive in terms of what the project team will actually be able to consider at the design phase. So the language that I'm looking at is in the Fireweed project description, which says that the project will include a road diet, changing Fireweed from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, 2 with a center turn lane. So that language seems really specific, where it will be 3 lanes with a center turn lane, and there's no option in there, no flexibility that seems to be apparent in there. So we're very supportive of reducing it from 4 lanes, but we wondered if it would be possible to change that language to say that it would be a maximum of 3 lanes. which would then allow the design team to consider other options, such as reducing it to 2 lanes instead of 3. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if maybe the committee would consider changing that language or recommending the change to that language so that it would say a maximum of 3 lanes instead of 3 lanes exactly. Thank you.
And then Nancy, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Committee, I trust that you have read some of the public comments on the draft tip. And if you have, you will know that one of the oft repeated comments from the public is deep frustration that the public is speaking into a black hole. Staff processes the comments into a chart, but as we've just heard, comments are often misinterpreted. And as you have also seen, there are almost no significant or substantive revisions to the draft tip in response to comments. So therefore, understand that this testimony that you're hearing today is not last minute. It's part of the frustrated public's ongoing attempt to be heard. And I'll thank Mr. Begich for his comment that in his experience, project money never has had to be paid back, or words to that effect. And then also one other misconception or misunderstanding that I think is often put out there is threats of delays and more public comment periods if you make revisions today. And our reading is that AMATS does not have to declare a new public comment period for the tip unless revisions to the tip raise new issues that the public could not have foreseen. And the public is talking today about long-standing issues and projects. So then on to my specific comments. I would like you to add to the tip an integrated land use and transportation plan. Methods to integrate land use planning and transportation budgeting are needed so that infrastructure truly supports infill and redevelopment and doesn't induce traffic. Second, a vehicle emissions study. We need methods to monitor and model vehicle emissions to ensure public health, both short and long term. Unless we monitor vehicle emissions, we can't effectively manage them. Third, A and C streets. I'm asking for a redesign study for complete streets for these 2 corridors. Currently, wide lanes and high-speed traffic are deterring infill and redevelopment and are posing severe hazards to all modes of travel. We need the same kind of design study for I and L streets. Every great city has a thriving downtown. A walkable downtown will spur residential development, and it will revive our historic commercial and cultural center. And finally, getting on to 92nd Avenue and the Scooter Underpass. That amounts to a $200 million mile along the Seward Highway and the 92nd extension. You can delete this unneeded underpass, which will only induce more driving trips and degrade a low-income residential area. This underpass is so close to Diamond Boulevard interchange that it needs a federal highway waiver. And it's a dinosaur project. It was hatched 2 decades ago when Diamond Center was the only regional mall in town. Now we have needs that are much more acute elsewhere. And if you can't delete the Academy and Vanguard collector roads, then push them to the out years and see if we can't use that underpass as a non-motorized shortcut, not a vehicular shortcut that will induce traffic. Some money may have already been spent, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the 18 million in collector roads for that short section through the neighborhoods there. And again, it will degrade the neighborhood. So I hope you will give serious consideration to substantive revisions. I've given 2 project suggestions that you could delay or downsize to free up some money for these much needed other projects that fit our local goals and priorities. Thank you.
Amanda, please go ahead. There you go. I think you're on mute.
Daniel Boland, you're up if you would like to speak.
we can come back to you. Nobody else online has their hand up.
Are we public comment section of the agenda?
Yes.
Where do I speak from? Here or up there?
If you want to stand, and you can stand over there if you want, or at your chair, it's up to you.
Be able to hear me over the line. People will be able to hear me that are online.
Yes, if you
Yeah,
just go ahead and
people
state
can
your
hear
name.
you.
Okay. My name is Bill Herman. I've lived in Alaska since 1975. And I've been in Anchorage since 1998. Been here. Lived in the valley for a while. Part of the commuter system that ran back and forth. Drove one of the vans. I love the municipality helping us with that. I was involved in the Anchorage Climate Action Plan and felt it was a good plan, but there was grandiose goals and very few interim steps, very few interim measurements. I'm concerned that we won't have kind of an incremental effort going on to get to the goals that the lofty goals that we have in that plan. And I was kind of hoping that I would see, I'm not totally familiar with everything you're working on right now. I did work with AMATS when I was working for the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority a little bit, so I'm somewhat familiar with the process. But just feel like we need to start having plans that talk about reducing emissions, measuring emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and then setting sub goals. So that when we get to 2040, we hit that 50% reduction that we talk about in the climate action plan for the municipality. I feel like we and everybody else in the world really need to start having incremental steps towards these goals rather than and measurements and kind of feedback. So that's what I'm concerned about. I also want to complain about your website. I went on it yesterday trying to figure out where the meeting was, when the meeting started. I clicked through various places, read that the meeting started at 1:30 to 3:30 in an array of the information. So I was getting ready to come here at 1:30, then I heard from another friend of mine that it was really at 2:30, and then I got an email from Christine. Yes, thank you. And she helped me kind of get squared away on when the meeting actually was happening and where. So I decided to come down in person. So I clicked on the little link that it said for the meeting today, their array of meetings. And what I got I got turned into a live Google kind of meeting with me only being the only one there. And I had no idea what I was doing, how I was going to get to the meeting, and wondered why I was able to get into an active listening place a day before the meeting. So I was really confused by that too. So I found kind of your saying over and over that you want public testimony, but I don't see it very user friendly. So I wanted to say that. But happy to see the bicycles routes that you're putting in and other ways of transportation. But I think we need to have interim goals and measure the emissions and connect process so we can have things correlate with each other. Less pavement or other ways to transport. Thank you very much.
Daniel, would you like to speak now? Or we can go on to Ann.
Thank you. This is Ann Rappaport. I co-chair the Rabbit Creek Community Council, and we submitted some extensive comments on this, on the tip. And so we're a little frustrated that it seems like all of our comments were just sort of like, okay, it's already considered, or it just seems like there wasn't a lot of, they just all pretty much got ignored. And I wanted to just mention a couple things, specific ones that are of particular concern. We also talked about the need to delete 2 projects, specifically the Academy and Vanguard road area. Now, I heard Aaron mention that some money has already been spent and we would have to return that. I think another way around one of the things we said with those projects is we didn't think there needed to be all the road work. We do, and they tie into the 92nd Avenue scooter underpass, which we felt should be deleted because it's just a super expensive project. It's based on numbers from 20 years ago, as far as when the Diamond Mall was really the only mall in town. And what could be done is perhaps a pedestrian underpass, but not a huge motorized underpass. And so I think perhaps the money that has been spent could be put into improving those pedestrian bike path opportunities without having it be also available for cars. So that's a huge change that would save lots of money that then could be put into some of the broader land use studies that have been talked about by some other folks, where we're integrating land use and transportation plans together. So we really have a coordinated plan and development for our city, which also leads into a couple of the downtown projects, which I'll just sort of segue personally talk about, not for Rabbit Creek Community Council. We didn't happen to mention these there, but I've lived in Anchorage for over 40 years. I worked downtown for like 33 years, more than 35 years. So I commuted from South Anchorage to downtown for most of that, but I also lived downtown for about 7 years. And I walked to work during those my early years here. And Anchorage is not walker friendly. It's, when we say that tourism is a huge part of our economy, and having a more walkable downtown would benefit, would help enhance our tourist experiences, as well as the fact that we're starting to develop a lot of more housing downtown and these mixed buildings, which is great, but we really need to make it an attractive place for people. And so that's where there needs to be some better studies on like I Street and L Street and the 4th, 5th, 6th areas to make it much more user friendly. And then also ANC is another place where I've biked to work some, and they're just really awful streets to bike on. And people walking between, there's all the stores and everything around there, and it's just a concrete jungle, and a lot could be done to improve that area as well. A couple other things we had talked about in our Rabbit Creek Community Council plan comments. We talked about the Anchorage Climate Action Plan, which does not seem to be noted in here at all. So that while there is an item about air quality, it just doesn't even mention the Climate Action Plan, and those really need to go hand in hand. Another thing is the fleet replacement expansion for anchor rides. That's great, but what about considering electric vehicles? I'm disappointed that there's no mention of those, which would then, of course, help in meet goals of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan, as well as the air quality goals of this plan. And I believe there's some other specific talking about replacing vehicles, and it just talks about diesel vehicles, and we shouldn't keep looking to diesel vehicles. We've really got to look toward electric vehicles, cleaner vehicles over time. What else? I think those are the main ones.
Thank you.
And
Thank
so-
you.
Monitoring of make that
All
we.
right, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next, we have George Donhart. Like to speak?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I have to, I think, echo a few things that have been said. One was the frustration with the idea that if you've already spent money on a project, then you have to complete it. That seems like it's a huge waste of money and time. And, but I also understand that when you're trying to plan, it's hard to plan if you change your plan all the time. But this is something I think that you have to be able to. The other thing is that it was very hard to figure out how to get onto this meeting, and fortunately I already didn't have to download a new app to use this, but it's just not apparent on the AMATS website how to get into this meeting. As far as my substantive comments go, I live near downtown. I feel really lucky that I'm able to get around both downtown and in Spinard. But I've lived down here for a long time, and I have to say that there are parts of town that are good, where there's good alternative methods of getting around. But as far as north-south, there's not a lot of real safe, easy use of anything other than cars. And I think that, if we want to be the kind of city that attracts people to it, both as tourists, but also people who want to move here. We need to offer more alternatives to transportation than we have right now. A single bus will, freeze up about a mile of freeway. And it certainly does a lot to cut down on both traffic and parking in a place like downtown. So I wanted to advocate for the complete street study for AC couplet and for the INL streets, because we need safe walkability. And integrating land use planning with transportation budgeting. I think that's something that is our city becomes denser downtown. There's already excess parking, and we don't. I think it'd make more sense to have people utilizing that excess parking for buildings and housing and whatnot, rather than bringing more traffic congestion. And I also have to say, it is up to us. We have to do our part if we're going to stop climate change. We have to be focusing on greenhouse gas emissions. If we don't focus on it, we're not going to do anything about it. So the things you measure are what you care about. And so we really need to be looking at that. We need to be finding a way to cut our emissions. And so I think having a greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan is really, really critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Evan Anderson, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, thanks so much for the opportunity to comment today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Evan Anderson. I'm staff to Representative Zach Fields in the Alaska Legislature. I submitted a letter from 10 Anchorage legislators urging a few specific changes to the draft tip for this year. In addition to that, I also myself submitted, I think, 6 or 8 nominations to the tip back in February. Unfortunately, none of which ended up in the final draft here. So I won't repeat everything that's in that letter. I trust that the policy committee members received that. And thanks for this deliberation and for all the work you're putting into this process. But I do want to highlight quickly a couple of items from that letter. And the first is to fund a design study for complete streets for A and C streets. As other commenters have mentioned, it's A and C, I and L, 4th and 5th, and potentially 3rd that all were identified in the Anchorage downtown plan as needing the upgrade to complete streets. And they unfortunately aren't all located in the tip. Second, to prioritize construction of pedestrian facilities on all major roads where they're missing or inadequate. And so I am really glad to see that, the 2 deletions and 3 additions that do include pedestrian facilities on a couple of major arterial and connector roads. That's really, really good to see, and would like to see those continue to be upgraded to complete streets that include protected bike lanes as well. So that all users can access those roads. I think other commenters have already spoken to funding plans for integrating land use and transportation policies, and funding a plan for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and also for deleting the freeway underpass at 92nd Avenue and the neighborhood connector roads at Academy and Vanguard. I guess I'll just share with remaining time a little bit about myself. I've always been happiest in Anchorage when I live somewhere where I can walk and bike everywhere I need to go. My current address is in Chugiak, and while it's beautiful out there, I despise the driving in and out on the Glen Highway. If there was any kind of option for me to take transit or to live, closer to the urban core more cheaply with more housing and more transit accessible housing, I would jump on that in a heartbeat. And I think there's a lot of people in and around Anchorage who feel the same way. So the $1.27 billion that we're spending on our roads, I think we can realistically spend more of that on pedestrian and bike infrastructure so that all users, not just those who are of driving age and licensed to drive and have the economic resources to get around by car, so we're not just prioritizing one user group, but all. So thanks again for your time and thanks for all the thoughtful deliberation.
Thank you, Evan.
We'll try one more time for Daniel Boland. Don't have anybody else queued up.
All right. Well, that takes care of public comments. What is the will of the committee?
You mean for the flame?
Move to refer this for interagency consultation. Is that the right motion?
Yes, I get this. Thank you.
I'll second. Are there any objections to approving the motion?
Yes, I actually have some comments and amendments I'd like to make to the document that's going to be moved for consultation.
Okay.
May I proceed with my first amendment? So I move to amend this document for the Minnesota corridor study to add that the study will include I and L streets.
Second. Do we need seconds in this committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I speak briefly to the motion?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So we've heard about the importance of I and L streets to the public. When we were studying Minnesota Drive already as a corridor, that corridor connects with downtown at I and L streets. It just makes good sense, I think, to include those in the study as is being put forward, particularly about how the traffic moving in and out of downtown along Minnesota intersects with the residential areas and as it moves into town. So I think that makes it a more complete study, and I'd urge your support. Thank you.
Just a real quick question for staff. There's not going to be a corresponding increase to that, is there, to the cost? Since we're increasing the length?
I don't think so. I think it's reasonable to assume that the 700,000 shown for that can accommodate that. I guess I would just need clarification. What's the termini we would look at? Do we stop at 3rd Avenue, 5th Avenue? Where's our length going for INL, the whole thing?
I would recommend the terminus being 3rd Avenue. Or I would clarify my motion to be 3rd Avenue if the seconder would agree.
I agree.
Thank you.
So I'm
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that we're going to find the money in the existing budget to extend the project.
Yes. I feel confident we can do that.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Altel, do you have an additional amendment?
I do, but do we need to vote on that one first? Or ask for consent or whatever?
So we have an amendment by Ms. Altel to extend the I&L Street, the study of Minnesota to I&L and extend it to 3rd Avenue. And moved by Ms. Altel, second by Mr. Dunbar. We have a vote for that motion. Is that what you want to do? Vote?
You can do vote, or you can just ask if there's any objections to that.
Thank you.
It's up to you.
Thank you. See my other cheat sheet here. Are there any objections to approving the amendment? There are no objections. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to retain the 5th Avenue signalization, but remove the funding.
Second.
Go ahead, Ms.
I couldn't hear if that got a second. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So okay. Okay, sorry. This phone thing is really difficult. My apologies. So the intent there is to keep it in the tip. If a project falls off the tip, we find the money or we have the money, it's there, it's ready, and we can plug it back in. I think that it's important that we continue to look at the signalization. We want to keep it on the radar, and we would want it to be a carryover project. If for some reason we can't find the money in this tip to move it into the next tip, I'd feel much more comfortable if it was moving forward as a carryover versus having to be renominated in the next process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trombley, you got a comment?
Yeah, to staff, what's the ramifications of that? I see most of these projects have a dollar amount. Obviously, well, actually, there's some of them that don't have a dollar amount. Can you keep something in there but remove the funding?
So if it's a project that's underway and could need additional funding, we're keeping it in there in case that additional funding is needed. If it's a brand new project with no funding, you can't do that. You have to be able to show funding for the project because it speaks to fiscal constraint.
So that, and you're, okay.
So if a project that's already underway needs additional funding, we would have to come back and do an amendment to the tip to find that additional funding to then add it to that project. If it's a brand new project, we'd have to find the funding first to even add it to the program. So right now, there is no funding to keep these projects in unless we pull it from another project.
So for example, the O'Malley Road construction has all zeros. That's because the project's underway and you're looking for additional funding.
It could need additional funding if like a cost increase comes. We're keeping it in there just as a placeholder because it's already underway. But if we need to come back and change those zeros to actual dollars,
Yep.
we would have to do an amendment and do our public process for that to let people know where that funding is coming from.
And the Fifth Avenue signal projects are not underway. And because they're not underway, you cannot not have a line item for it.
Because it is a brand new project, we would need to show the funding, where that funding is going to come from in
Understand.
our 4 years.
Understand, okay, appreciate it.
Based on that clarification, I will go ahead and is it possible to move that into the 5th year so it's in the future category without any funding? I guess I have a clarifying question before I make any procedural move.
We've never done that, so I would have to check with FHWA to see what impacts that has to our program. That is something we can look at, but I'm a little cautious to say yes because I don't know how mean.
Well, I guess what I would say, because this is going for interagency consultation and we'll have the opportunity to make any changes based on interagency consultation, that I would change my motion then to put it in the 5th year. And then if for some reason that can't happen, we can have that reported back and we can make the appropriate change before approving the tip. If the seconder to the motion would agree, I would prefer to proceed that way instead of figuring it out and then coming back and making the change later.
I agree.
So really quickly for our interagency consultation, just so everyone's aware, when we do the interagency consultation, we're giving them the tip and they review it to see what impacts it has on air quality. If we make changes to the list of projects in there from what we showed to them originally, then we're going to have to go back through interagency consultation after those changes are made to have them redo the interagency consultation. So if we add or delete projects, we have to redo that consultation process.
What's the time added to something like that?
It takes 2 months to get through because you have to do a month to develop the air quality conformity determination and then 30-day review of it. It may not take 2 months again for a follow-up. We haven't done that before, so.
Okay, so if we kick it out to the 5th year, when we go for interagency review, I'm assuming this project won't show up on this because it's only going out 4 years.
We send them this whole document.
Yep.
So they will see everything on it.
So they won't see, but if Mrs. Altel's amendment did pass, and it kicked, is there a sheet out there somewhere that shows 27? Or is that just a hypothetical?
It's kind of hypothetical for us what it would be. And, you know, when they do the air quality conformity analysis, they're really looking at the 4 years of the actual
Yeah.
physical constraint. So I don't know if there's a problem with showing it in the 5th year. It's not something we've ever done before. So I would have to reach out to FHWA and EPA and see what their thoughts are on the
Would,
situation, unless somebody here.
if we, if we waited to, if we took this out now, well, no, that wouldn't work. Never mind.
I mean, I will note, you can always add projects in later after we've approved the tip through an amendment process, if we find the funding for it.
All right. Any other discussion on Amendment 2? Is it?
So I just got a suggestion. Could we put it in for $1, something like that, a nominal amount?
No, because when you put it in this program, you are telling FHWA you're intending to move forward with that project. It's specifically not allowed to do that kind of gamesmanship with the program.
You'll have to answer to Mr. Weddleton yourself.
Hi, Mr. Littleton.
Oh, hey, Mr. Weddleton.
Right. Any other discussion about Amendment 2? All right. Are there any objections to the approving of the motion?
Object.
And you do a vote, roll call.
Yep.
Can we continue discussion after an objection, or do we have to immediately vote?
Yeah, you can,
Discussion.
yeah, yes.
So I guess I would ask Ms. Zolotel, the maker of the motion, if she wants to proceed with this, given what we've heard.
Yes, I would like to proceed.
Okay.
All right. So proceeding, we will do a roll vote. Mr. Dunbar.
Yes.
Ms. Altel.
Yes.
Mr. Trombley.
No.
Ms. Pokin.
No.
And my vote is no. The motion is lost. Sorry, the amendment is lost.
Mr. Chair, I have one final amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to delete on the 92nd and Scooter Avenue project the language after the first sentence. So I move to delete, project includes an underpass to connect 92nd Avenue with Academy Drive.
What project number is that?
So it's on table 8 NHS, it's project NHS 0004.
That's correct.
It's the Seward Highway O'Malley Road to Diamond Boulevard reconstruction phase 2.
Could you, I'm sorry, could you restate your proposal, Ms. Altel?
Yes, of course, Mr. Chair. I would just move to delete the second sentence of that project, which says, so it would delete, project includes an underpass to connect 92nd Avenue west of Seward Highway with Academy Drive east of Seward Highway, period.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Trombley?
Oh, I'm sorry, there wasn't a second.
You need a second.
Sorry,
Second.
jumping. Second by Mr. Dunbar, move amendment by Ms. Altel, second by Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Trombley, your discussion.
Could I speak to the motion really quickly first, please?
Yes.
As the maker? Thank you.
Yes.
You know, Thank you. I understand this project's partly underway, and particularly the Seward Highway portion. The issue really does come from the underpass at 92nd. Not only is it opposed by the neighborhood and it's very expensive, it then creates the follow-along project needed at Academy and Vanguard. And it really feels like the two projects coupled together are not the highest and best use of a fiscally constrained program when there are so many competing demands. And we're really at a point where we need to be looking forward and much more in a multimodal fashion. So I think those funds could be much better reallocated to some other projects that more accurately reflect, frankly, the comments the Assembly has put forward on the last MTP and that we've heard from the public. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Mr. Trump.
yeah, to staff, if this amendment, obviously the dollar amount would change substantially. Would there need to be a correlating reduction in the 105 million? As well as, well, I guess the total project cost would have to drop. And then what would that cost be?
I guess there are two things I'll speak on here about how these tables work past table 6. So
Okay.
anything table 7 onward. As they are not part of the AMATS allocation, AMATS policy board only has 2 options: accept the projects as given or say no to them. AMATS does not have the ability to come in and make changes as recommended in this amendment, because they are not AMATS projects. They are, in this case, Department of Transportation projects. So you wholesale accept it or you don't accept it at all.
So
And that's-
you can't amend the language?
No, because
Okay.
this is AMATS, or this is DOT's project as they have it in the STIP. It's their funding that they're putting towards it.
So, okay, so then, Mr. Chairman, the amendment, it sounds like the amendment can't be made. So we just have to accept it. I guess the amendment could be to remove it. The amendment could be made to just remove the project in total, or to keep, or just do say nothing and still go on.
May I ask a clarifying question, please?
Yes, Ms. Alto.
Thank you. To staff, I can only see what's up on the screen. Can you tell me where this project is? I can't see the portion to the right that has the years and where the project is, because this project's partially underway. So I guess I just need like a little bit of a project update as to, has construction already started, or is this a design? Is it still in the design phase? Where are we at?
We actually, Sean Baskey is here. He can actually speak to that if you're willing to entertain that, Chair.
Yes, please.
Sure. Sean Baskey, the head of the highway design section for Alaska DOT Central Region. The project is currently 99% complete on the design. We're looking to go to construction in 2023. So we're finalizing the last little details on it.
Thank you, Sean.
So, Mr. Chair, given the information provided by staff, I'll withdraw my motion.
I agree.
Withdrawn by Ms. Alto, second by Mr. Dunbar. Thank you. Are there any objections to withdrawing the amendment? Seeing none, the amendment is withdrawn. Any other amendments, Ms. Alto?
No other amendments. I did have one comment before we move to possibly vote on the item, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. So first, thanks to staff for their considerable effort on this, as always. And second, to the public for its really thoughtful comments. With regard to the request for A and C Street, corridor studies. That's kind of how I'm interpreting that request. I think that's really important. I wanted to just express that it's on my radar, but that if we are going to move forward with a corridor study for ANC, I think it's got to go all the way south to Tudor Road, because ANC also plays such an integral part in how traffic moves and the walkability and the accessibility of Midtown. I think it's a really great idea. I wish we could find the funding right now. I know a lot of the studies, the corridor studies, are funded with CRISA funding, which doesn't require a match. So if the opportunity arises, I really hope we could look to fund a corridor study. It would be very complementary to the Tudor, the Northern Lights, Benson, and Minnesota studies. It would really complete the package. But I do acknowledge that right now we don't have the funding in this program to do that, and that it would require the little over 9% match by DOT. So I'm hoping we can get there in this tip. So I just wanted to say that, and thanks for entertaining my amendments. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dub.
I have a couple of questions for staff, if it's all right. So I have two topics. First one I think is pretty easy. The Academy Vanguard project, just looking at the language here, improve and align at Academy Drive and Vanguard west of Abbott Road. But I remember when we were discussing sort of what portion the municipality would cover, what portion the city would cover, it kind of branches, right? Some of it goes north to Abbott, some of it I think goes south into the neighborhood. Am I misremembering that? And does this project, does it cover both? Does it cover the southern portion as well?
I guess I'll need some help if, Sean, if you're willing to entertain, Sean Baskey.
I think it's Vanguard South of Academy, I think is the right.
Sure. Sean Baskey, again. So the Academy Vanguard project tees off of Abbott Road.
Yep.
And so Vanguard is the north-south road coming off of Abbott, basically.
Yeah.
Abbott kind of has a little hook there.
Right.
So Vanguard's the north-south. Academy is the east-west that ties into the frontage road, Braden Drive.
Yep.
And so Academy Vanguard project is basically a connection between Academy and Vanguard that ties west over into the Seward Highway project.
So, I mean, we're putting this new, this is all driven by this new sort of, we're punching Academy through, right?
Sure.
So why do we feel that when people, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, people come from east of New Seward, drive along Academy, I'm sorry, come from west and drive along Academy East and hit that, and then the road, tees, and one way goes to Abbott, and then one way goes into the neighborhood. Why do we assume everybody's gonna turn left? I guess is my question.
So the main traffic draw would be a movement through that. So the municipality of Anchorage advanced the project for a while. I think they got up to 75% complete. They looked at, the needs of the traffic through that space with the assumption that the Seward Highway under crossing would connect Scooter to Academy through there, right? So with that assumption, they based all of their volumes off of, what their, their models and their interpretation of what would occur.
So if you take a right, you go south to Independence, is that right?
Yeah, eventually it'll connect into.
And that's I think a lot of the concerns in the neighborhood. So is there any money in this project to deal with traffic that might go south to Independence driven by the states punching through Academy?
So I can speak to what I understood the municipal project to have. There were potential options for including something that I think, but once it became federalized, AMATS only had the connection of Academy Vanguard. No additional improvements were part of the scope, further down south along Vanguard.
So if there is increased traffic along Vanguard Independence, the municipality needs to bond for it, basically. I mean,
As scoped, the current project that's there does not include anything. So some other mechanism would have to be in place to.
Okay.
To improve.
So, and my second question, just a follow-up for Aaron on the ANC couplet, the study, which was one of the frequent comments we got. So we obviously, you deleted 2 projects and you added 3. Why wasn't that one of the 3 added, and sort of how far up the list is it? If you had a little bit more money, would it have been the 4th thing added? And how far up is it on the list to be added?
So the study itself was actually not nominated as part of the process.
Okay.
What was nominated was a reconstruction of ANC, the actual construction project.
Okay.
It was scored and ranked, and it ranked up there. But when the scoring committee got together, they looked at it and recognized it hadn't been reviewed as part of the MTP model. Because what we always do is projects that are going to have an impact on our network, lane reduction, other things like that, we review it as part of the MTP model so we can see the entire impacts on the overall network. Good examples of this are both Spinard Road rehabilitation projects with their changes have been modeled as part of the MTP and assessed what impacts, positive and negative, it would have on the network. The Fireweed Lane rehabilitation project, same thing. And then the Northern Lights lane reduction project is also modeled. Since ANC was not, staff recommended that that be looked at with this current 2050 MTP model update before moving forward with the project.
And so some of the public comments were do a study, but it sounds like that's not, you have your modeling and then you have the actual project. Is there something in the middle where you do a study like that?
You can do a study now. It's just to add a study into this into the tip now, where would the money come from?
And so you're saying that's the idea of a study was not scored, and so it wasn't even evaluated versus these other projects.
No. We didn't hear about a study until basically maybe a little bit before the TAC meeting last week, as we got some comments from a number of individuals from the public that were talking about this study. Specifically asking for it as a study versus what was nominated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, where are we? So we have a motion and a second on the action item 5A with a motion and a second and approved amendment 1. Do we have a new final motion?
Move to approve the 2023-2026 TIP interagency draft as amended.
Second.
Are there any objections to approving this motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved as amended. Moving on to action item 5B, 2019 to 2022 TIP Amendment 3 Air Quality Conformity Determination. Aaron?
Still going strong. Okay, next item is our current TIP, the 2019 to 2022. We are doing an amendment to this TIP. It's amendment number 3 that's making some changes to the railroad and transit tables, as a few other updates to other tables as well as adding in the air cargo facility. So this air quality conformity determination is required, and it is required to be approved first before the actual amendment itself is approved. So you're seeing the air quality conformity amendment in front of you right now. This air quality conformity amendment reviewed the TIP amendment number 3 to see if there were going to be any impacts, negative impacts to air quality during the life of the TIP, and it found that there will be no impacts to the SIP measures as required by FHWA EPA. So before you is approval of the determination itself. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this and recommended approval.
Move to approve.
We did.
Sorry, public comment, my fault.
We'll start with comments from the committee. Anybody from the committee have any comments for this motion? Sorry, for this agenda item. Right, any comments from the public?
Oh, just wanted to make note real quick, Meg Zolotel had to sign off.
Okay.
Thank you, Meg.
All right, any comments from the public? Thank you. What is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Timing rate.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Action item 5C, 2019 to 2022 TIP amendment number 3. Aaron,
So this is the actual TIP amendment itself. So we do have before you the memo that explains all of the changes that are happening as part of this amendment. And in yellow, highlighted in yellow, are additional changes that came from the or the public comment period for this amendment. So there are a few additional changes, mostly just housekeeping items of keeping the program moving forward and funding fiscally constrained. I can go through individual questions you have on any of these changes, but they're all pretty standard in their approach. So what is being asked before you today is approval of TIP amendment number 3 with the changes listed in this memo that'll go with that air quality conformity determination to the state and then FHWA FTA for final review.
I do have one question.
yes.
It's not on the list, but I don't know if this is the right time to ask a question, so I'm just gonna do it now since we're making an amendment. I got a call from the airport director and he asked if we would be interested, I guess, back in 2020 or early 2021, the city at the time was not interested in being a part of the Point Warrenzoff. Everybody knows Point Warrenzoff is sloughing off, right? And it's gonna affect the coastal trail at the time. And sometime late 2020, early 2021, the city manager at the time said, we're not interested in being part of of that study. I was just talked to a couple weeks ago by the airport director, asked if we would be interested, and I said, we're absolutely interested in being part of that. Since that affects the coastal trail, would that need to go into the TIP in any way? I mean, there's a core study that has to happen. It's not like it's gonna happen tomorrow, right? So there's a process involved, but is that something that we should make an amendment into the TIP now, later?
Okay, I'll kind of go through all of the process for this.
Yeah.
So if it's utilizing federal funds, then yes, it'll need to be in the TIP.
Okay.
If it's not using federal funds, then no, it wouldn't necessarily have to be in the TIP, unless FHWA says otherwise, like the cold storage facility.
Right.
And making an amendment or change of that significance right now would
Yeah.
basically mean we'd have to restart our whole process for this amendment that we've already spent about 5 months on.
Yep, okay.
We'd have to put it back out for public comment, redo the air quality, we'd go back to the assembly, everything like that. So, but we can speak more if you know more information. If it's federal funds, we can look and see if it needs to be in the TIP.
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking back from the airport. I'm assuming with something to do with dealing with the airport that there probably would be some federal funds involved. But I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe, does that include FAA funds as well? Because that's federal, so FAA is not required.
No, FAA wouldn't be required in here, but it'd only be if they have some FTA or FHWA funding, Federal Transit Authority, Federal Highways Authority. If they require it, then it would have to be in here. So we'd have to get more specifics on the project.
Okay, okay, all right. Thanks.
Are there any additional questions or comments by the committee? On action item 5C. Any comments from the public? What is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Are there any objections to approving this motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Aaron, are there any other action items?
No, sir, they're not.
Excellent. Agenda item 6A, Downtown Trails Connection Project Update. Aaron, are you presenting on this one?
I thankfully will be passing it over to somebody else to be presenting, so go ahead. Go ahead and state your name for the record, please.
My name is John Picar. I'm with Kinney Engineering. Online, Juan Lee is with us. She's with R&M Consultants. If she could share her screen. Give you that way folks online can follow along. But just hoping to give you folks just a general overview of the project, current status, and what we're planning for the future. This project has been planned, it's been part of the Anchorage Area-wide Trails Plan since 1997. It's the final segment that would complete a 14-mile continuous ADA pathway from Kincaid all the way out, join up with the Ship Creek Trail all the way up to Tyson Elementary. Specifically, this project would start at Elderberry Park, so out at the end of 5th Avenue. If you go to Elderberry Park, go underneath the railroad tracks. That's where this project would begin. It would then just parallel the coastline north from that point. It would be offset from the railroad tracks, and it would be on municipal tidelands. North of about 2nd Avenue, this project will be entirely on railroad rights-of-way, railroad property. They own the tidelands as well as the uplands for the remainder of the project, all the way up to C Street. The project is designed to, with that in mind, this project will need the Railroad Board of Directors approval in order to be permitted on their property. And so there's a few specific things we're looking to do with this project. Specifically, we don't want to impact future railroad improvements. So in this initial stretch of the project between Elderberry and 2nd Avenue, we're looking to offset 100 feet away from existing railroad tracks. The purpose of that is to provide the railroad the ability to upgrade, provide additional tracks in the future. They're currently constrained by the existing coastal trail that's there, so they can't expand east. They have to go west. And so in order to improve their switching operations in their yard, that's the only direction they're left to expand. We're also trying to be aware and not impact existing lease properties. And then also not to propose any structures that might impact their operations. So I'll get into that here in just a minute. Basically, after we go up north here, we'll parallel and cross just south of the existing boat launch parking, at which point the project will have a T that it'll allow access out to the existing park facilities that are at the existing small boat launch. From there, the project, the pathway will parallel the small boat launch road and follow it up to the point of where it reaches the existing boat launch road bridge. The proposed trail will at that point go underneath both the boat launch road bridge and the railroad's bridge at railroad mile 114. The railroad is proposing to replace that bridge. So this project is going to have to be coordinated with the railroad's project. And in this vicinity, we're not allowed to have any overhead structures. So that's the reason for the underpass in this location. From there, the project just parallels up Ship Creek to where it intersects to the existing start of the Ship Creek Trail at C Street. So currently, this project is in an environmental stage. We're doing our NEPA documentation. So we're doing mapping of the wetlands. We're going through monitoring if there's any eagles in the area, eagle nesting. And this summer, we're looking to do geotechnical investigations, drilling, and all in preparation of completing that environmental document. That'll be late this year that happens. Along with that process, we'll be working towards the first public meeting in August and going into design in 2023 with construction planned for 2024. But again, back to the railroads project is also planned at that time frame, so we'll have to see if there's any additional considerations as that project unfolds. But that project won't be able to start until after September of this year. So that would be the point at where we can start coordinating on that job. Those were the basics that I was hoping to cover here. If there's any questions, I can take those.
Thank you. Are there any questions by the committee? Are there any questions by the public?
Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks. Yeah, hi, this is Emily Weiser again with Bike Anchorage. I have two questions. I'll start with one, and that is about so where the proposed trail goes along Ship Creek. There's currently like a kind of a dirt foot trail that goes underneath that railroad bridge there where the railroad parallels Small Boat Launch Road. And at very high tides, that trail is entirely flooded. So I was wondering if that's something that will be addressed with this project and if you can make sure that stays above the water line at all times.
Yeah, so the current concept for that area for this project is that we'd be constructing something similar. If you're familiar with the Chester Creek Trail, where it goes underneath C Street today, it has a concrete U section to prevent the Chester Creek when the water level rises on Chester Creek, it prevents it from overtopping into the pathway. And so we're proposing a similar structure for these undercrossings in order to get, if it's going to be a pathway, we need to get bicyclists underneath these structures. And so we will need to be going deeper than the existing dirt pathways that are there today. So that is a pinch point in the design of this project.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, if I may, is I was wondering if the existing coastal trail will stay where it is, so still connecting up to, I think that's 2nd Avenue with this project?
This project is not proposing any changes to that segment of the trail.
Great, thank you.
Okay, one more person with their hand raised. George, go ahead.
Yeah, as someone who uses the Chester Creek Trail quite often and has seen a lot of problems with that C Street underpass, what would be done differently here so that you don't end up with a lot of flooding and ice jamming under along Ship Creek there if it's going to be below the level of high tide?
Essentially, we'll have to, we're going to have to look at a number of factors, but basically we'll try to make the height of that wall adequate so that during high tides and flooding activity that we do not negatively and that we do not get overtapping. I do expect though that there's going to have to be some type of compromise made there where there's going to be some extreme events that will overtop that facility, and that'll be something that will have to be, it'll be a compromise that we'll have to discuss further as this project progresses. So it is a consideration that we will have to make.
The other question I have is that why was this route chosen rather than the 2nd Avenue route that drops down Christensen and goes next to the railroad depot?
This route is currently proposed primarily because it meets the needs of not having any at-grade crossings. To reach 2nd, some of the other previously investigated options all involved at-grade crossings, and those are something that we are that with the goal of this project is to get a continuous pathway to where we're not impacting the railroad's operations. But it's more public safety that we're after with eliminating those crossings. And so that, for that reason, alternatives that had at-grade crossings were not considered.
If the chair will permit, Emily has her hand up again to speak again. Emily, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, George's comment made me think about this when he was talking about snow and ice and stuff under C Street. So I was wondering if this may be a discussion for a later time, so you can tell me if we need to defer it. But I was wondering if this section would be plowed in the winter versus groomed. So Ship Creek Trail is plowed, so it's really accessible, and the coastal trail is currently groomed. And that might also affect what happens at that sort of underpass along Ship Creek there.
I don't have, as a designer, I don't have an answer to that because that's really a maintenance and operations activity. So that would be something that would have to be decided as a whole. You know, you'd have to do, either way, you're gonna have to dedicate maintenance and operations efforts towards either of those activities.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no other public comments. Aaron, are there any further project and plan updates?
There are not, thank you.
Excellent. There are no general comments, so move on to action item number 8, committee comments.
I do have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to, we received a letter from some members of the Alaska State Legislature. It says the Anchorage caucus, but I noticed that not every Anchorage legislator is on there. But they did take the time to write us a letter, so I'd like to make a motion if that's what's required for staff to provide a response, since they did send it specifically to several Senate members, but also the policy committee as well. So would that take a motion or should I just ask staff if they would do it?
These are not action items.
Okay, yeah, I would just ask that staff put together a letter for the policy committee. And then there's no rush if you want to bring it back to the next policy committee meeting in June. So we can review it and then we'd probably vote on that, what that would look like.
Are you asking for the letter to come
From staff?
from staff?
Yes.
But it'd be from the policy committee itself to the,
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Kind of help educate them on the processes involved with getting stuff in the tip, and that would be helpful. I know it's very confusing, and I know that they're very busy as well, so.
Any other committee comments? Moving on to agenda item 9, if there are no other committee comments. Public comments, are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, we move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Meeting is adjourned at 4:02.